What's up everyone, welcome back to the channel. So continuing on these iPhone 11 comparisons, this time we're going to be looking at the iPhone 11 Pro compared to another phone that's really in its same price league. I mean, these phones are selling for about the same price, actually the exact same price. These two phones are the iPhone 11 Pro, which just came out like last week, not even a week ago. It was announced like a little bit a while ago, but comparing that to the Note 10, Samsung Galaxy Note 10, which was actually announced a while, like a month or two ago. They're very, very close in age, and as we've noticed and as we've progressed with phones, we've noticed that, I mean, these two phones have always been competitors with each other, more so the Max or Plus versions of those phones, but more so, I mean, it really doesn't matter. This year was really, really weird because the Samsung Galaxy Note wasn't just its specifically only one device. You had the Note 10, which was the smaller variant, but also the Note 10 Plus, which was the bigger one. So between these two, yes, technically speaking, the Note 10 is kind of the bigger device overall, but you still have the bigger variant of both of these phones. So if you don't like the smaller variant, you can go and automatically just pick up that bigger one if you choose to. So that's a really, really cool thing. Now, before I get too far into this, I am doing an iPhone XR giveaway, so I'm giving one of those away randomly to one of you guys. If you want to enter, click that second link or third, fourth link in the description. It'll say free iPhone XR giveaway. Just click on that link. It'll take you to a video. Watch that video completely. It'll explain exactly how to enter. There's a couple different ways, so make sure you watch that video so you don't get confused. Now that pretty much covers all the basics. Now coming back to the comparison, now these things are only a month apart from each other, so there's really nothing to compare there. Now in design wise, they're almost kind of the same thing. I mean, the main difference is the front. You have a 5.8-inch Super Retina XDR OLED display on the iPhone 11 Pro, but a 6.3-inch dynamic AMOLED display on the Samsung Galaxy Note 10. So on the Note 10, I think the colors, in my opinion, are I think a little bit better. I've always been more biased towards Samsung panels for some reason. I just like their color accuracy, even though Samsung does source the panels for iPhones as well. I think it's kind of funny. However, I think the overall better display is the iPhone 11 Pro, and the reason being is not only is the resolution higher, you have 1125 by 2436, but the pixels per inch are higher, basically because of that. But apparently from both, I guess the brightness is higher on the iPhone 11 Pro than on the Samsung Galaxy Note 10, and for me specifically, that's not really that big of a deal, but for you that might be. So that's kind of an important thing to note. In terms of IP certification, they're both IP68 dust and water resistant. The thing though is that apparently the iPhone 11 Pros is better. You can go up to 4 meters of water for 30 minutes on the iPhone 11 Pro, but only 1.5 meters of water for 30 minutes on the Note 10. I don't know if that's 100% the case, but based off the spec sheet from GSM Arena, that's kind of what I'm seeing. So, take that with a grain of salt, if you will. They both have triple camera setups on the back. The iPhone 11 Pro has the notch. The Note 10, in my opinion, looks better though because of that hole punch display. You have less bezels on it. Interestingly enough, the screen to body ratio is 82.1% on the iPhone 11 Pro, but 90.9% on the Note 10. So even though you're getting a bigger panel, you're also getting less bezel, which is really, really nice. Now looking on the back, like I said, triple camera setups on both devices, glass on the back, very, very cool, premium feeling devices, no doubt. No headphone jacks on either of these devices, no expandable storage, which sucks on both the iPhone 11 Pro, but more so on the Note 10 because the Note 9 had expandable storage, so I don't really understand why they did that. So that pretty much covers it up in terms of the outside. They're very similar in terms of the feeling and everything. From what I've been seeing though, the iPhone 11 Pro is more durable. You have the frosted back glass, which kind of adds as a little bit more protection, I'm assuming. But ultimately, that's pretty much it from the outside. Now, the biggest differentiating factor between an iPhone and an Android device are usually the software updates. So the Note 10, it started off with Android Pie on Samsung's One UI, which is really, really cool. It's going to be getting the next version of Android and potentially the next version of Android on top of that, so probably up to Android 11. And at that point, I don't know if it's going to go further. It might not. And that's the biggest problem with Android. You don't really know because, Samsung usually gives it, an extra 2 versions of Android that what it's, released with. So it could potentially go on further. In my opinion, it's kind of 50-50 because Samsung is kind of in this mode where they're starting to kind of expand the lifespans of their devices, not necessarily expand, they're increasing the security updates, but they're also increasing the software and kind of focusing more into that more than the hardware. So that's really, really cool on the Android side. But on the iPhone side on Apple, dude, you already know with their software updates, they go crazy with it. The 11 Pro was released with iOS 13. It's going to be getting iOS 14, 15, 16, yada yada. The years go on and on. Basically, what I'm saying is the 11 Pro should technically last you a couple more years longer in software updates than the Samsung Galaxy Note 10. Is that a jab at the Note 10? Yes, kind of, because Samsung has always been like that. So it's kind of like yes and no. So in my opinion, not only is the iPhone 11 Pro going to outlast the Note 10, but it's also going to outlast the Note 11 and the Note 12, probably, who knows, depending if the iPhone 11 Pro gets an extra year of software updates. So it's a very, very weird thing right there. But in my opinion, I think the 11 Pro will outlast the Note 10 in terms of software updates. Now moving on to the actual speed and performance of both devices. Now I'll tell you the specs of both phones and I'll tell you my real world use right after. So the Samsung Galaxy Note 10 has a Qualcomm Snapdragon 855 chipset, an octa-core CPU, an Adreno 640 GPU, and 8 gigabytes of RAM. There's only one model of the Note 10, so the only model has 8 gigabytes of RAM. The iPhone 11 Pro has the Apple A13 Bionic chip, a hexa-core CPU, and on all three variants of the iPhone 11 Pro, it has 4 gigabytes of RAM. So on paper, technically half the amount of RAM as a Note 10, so you might assume, oh man, the iPhone 11 Pro is half as speedy or half as powerful as the Note 10. But that's not the case at all. And the reason being is because iPhones have always, and iOS in general, has always been a better optimizer at RAM than the Note 10. I said that so awkwardly. iOS devices have been better at utilizing the RAM that it has, more so than the Android counterparts. So in my opinion, when I was using my Samsung Galaxy Note 10 comparing to all my other devices, I noticed, yes, dude, without a doubt, the Samsung Galaxy Note 10 is a very solid device. It can still hold its own. It's still extremely powerful. There's really nothing wrong with it, And because of that lower resolution display, you can easily, kind of have some advantages there by pushing less pixels on the screen. The PPI is even less than the Note 9, but you have a powerful processor with the Snapdragon 855. So with phones out there with like a 1440p display, you kind of have an advantage there. But with something like an iPhone 11 Pro, I still think this phone, obviously it's the newest iPhone. The benchmark scores I've been getting on both phones are extremely out of the charts. So between these two, I don't know which one is faster. I would say probably from the beginning with the Note 10 might be just a split second faster when opening apps and everything. I feel like RAM management is still better on the iPhone device in my opinion. However, there has been some issues with iOS 13 recently that kind of affect the RAM management of the 11s and the 11 Pros, but I wouldn't necessarily take that out right now and jab at the iPhones just because of this RAM management issue, which is more so of a software issue. So what I can tell you from my experience from using both phones and owning both phones, in my opinion, I do think the iPhone 11 Pro is overall the better device in terms of performance and longevity. I've noticed with a lot of my Samsung devices, as I use them and as I progress using years and years later, they kind of get bogged down a lot faster than an iPhone. I'll give you an example with like an iPhone 6s. That phone, in my opinion, is an overall better and more powerful phone than, let's say, like a Samsung Galaxy S7. Even though they were kind of the same realm and same kind of like competitors at one time, I find that to be the case, even though the S7 has more and better specs on paper. So I think right now they're both very powerful phones, but I think a couple of years down the line, I think the iPhone will hold its own better than the Note 10 in my opinion. So that kind of covers the performance aspect of it. Now moving on to the cameras. Now they both have triple camera setups. The Note 10 has two 12 megapixel sensors, a wide angle lens, a telephoto lens, as well as an ultra wide 16 megapixel sensor. The iPhone 11 Pro has three 12 megapixel sensors, a wide angle lens, telephoto, and ultra wide sensor. They both can shoot 4K at up to 60 frames per second, 1080p at up to 240. And what I can tell you is, this is not a full in-depth comparison or anything, but I do think, in my opinion, for the back cameras, the Note 10 I think is the better overall camera because of the features that are built in within. So I kind of said that really weirdly, but basically like iPhones and even iOS, I think this is more of an iOS problem than an iPhone problem. So I mean, it's still an Apple problem. They just don't put that many features into their devices. They're starting to do a little bit more. You have, night mode, you have ultra wide sensors now on the iPhones that you didn't have before, but Samsung has been having them for a while. And I feel like the software is more optimized on the Note device rather than on an iPhone. all the features are built in straight into the camera app, so you can mess with them, you can do whatever you want to with it. Whereas on the iPhones, I mean, you have to go to a whole different app in order to mess with the camera settings, which is kind of annoying. It's not a humongous deal, it's not a deal breaker for anyone, I'm sure, but it's just more so of an annoyance than anything. So the quality isn't the same, or if you think one is better than the other, that might not be the case even. I feel like the quality is very, very good on both. Will you notice a difference? Probably, but everyone has their own. I can show the same picture to like 10 different people and they can say, oh, the Note 10 is so much better, but then the iPhone 11 Pro might be better to some other people. So in my opinion, I think both phones are great, but the Note 10 has the better camera app, making it maybe the better camera overall. The front camera though, I think is cooler on the iPhone 11 Pro. And in terms of the front, I think the iPhone 11 Pro actually might have the advantage because you can do 4K at up to 60 frames per second, where you can only do 4K at up to 30 frames per second on the Note 10. So it's a pretty big deal. They're both wide angle lenses on the front. So in terms of the camera, I'll definitely tell you they're both very great cameras for sure, but maybe the Note 10 has the advantage in my opinion. Now hitting on the battery life, this is also a super interesting thing. Now I think, to kind of spoil it, I think they're both kind of the same, but I would probably give the edge to the iPhone 11 Pro. The 11 Pro has a 3046 mAh battery. The Galaxy Note 10 has a 3500 mAh battery. They both can do wireless charging, they both can do all that, but I think maybe, the Note 10 definitely has a cooler feature with reverse wireless charging. So you can charge an iPhone 11 Pro from a Note 10, but you cannot charge a Note 10 from an iPhone 11 Pro. So as of right now, that seems to be the case. There's been rumors that Apple actually put that feature in, but there's no been verifications of it. So as of right now, that's kind of what we're seeing. So in my opinion, I will definitely tell you the iPhone 11 Pro, I think will have the better battery life, but it's going to be pretty close. So what I'll tell you is like this, the feature wise, the Note 10 is really, really cool. And I think it's cooler than the iPhone 11 Pro, but the iPhone 11 Pro I think will have the better battery life in long-term use. But I think it's like a split decision in terms of the iPhone 11 Pro versus the Note 10 right now, but hopefully with more use of the 11 Pro I can get a better opinion on that. Now that kind of covers up the whole entire comparison. Now obviously the Note 10 has a super dope feature of having the S Pen. That is something that the 11 Pro does not have. There's not even any Apple Pencil support, which is really weird. I feel like they could sell way more doing that, but in terms of the better value per dollar, I think you're getting a cooler phone with the Note 10. I think you're getting more features. I think you're getting, the reverse wireless charging, the S Pen, the better camera kind of to me, but that's kind of, opinionated, a better looking phone in my opinion because of that hole punch display versus the notch. But I do think the overall safer phone is the 11 Pro. You're getting longer support, you're getting a better screen. Apple's ecosystem is very, very great, and you cannot overlook that when looking at an Apple iPhone. The battery life I think is a little bit better on the 11 Pro. And like I said, longevity of the support, that is a humongous thing. So I think both of them are very great phones. You will probably see appreciation on the Note 10 though, so you can wait like a month or two. You can probably pick them up for half the price of what they are now versus the 11. It's going to hold its value much longer. So that kind of covers up the whole entire comparison. If you want to pick up an 11 Pro or a Galaxy Note 10, if I find them on Amazon, I'll link them down in the description below. I'll find the cheapest prices on Amazon, I'll link them there so you guys can help support the channel at the same time. But that is pretty much it. If you guys have any other or anything, leave it down in the comment section below. Hit that like button, that would mean so much, but definitely hit that subscribe button. Every subscriber that we get really does count, so it means so much if you guys get that. Also check out the other links down in the description as well. My Twitter, my Instagram, my second channel, all links are linked down below. I'd really appreciate if you guys could check it out, but more importantly than everything else, every single one, guys, hopefully I'll catch you guys in the next video. Peace out till then.